That organ music means only one thing. We're back in the second balcony. It's your pal Greg Boysen with the president of the Joe Hofer fan club, Frank Nova, our resident Florida man. Hey, have you heard the big news, Frank? The Blackhawks rebuild is over.
It is over.
It's over.
It is a unqualified success. I should bring some plywood in and bang on it.
Print those playoff tickets. The rebuild is over. No, it's not. But we had both ends of the spectrum since the last time we talked.
Yeah. Well, no, last time we talked, we had the march to the penalty box.
Yes.
But they picked up 4 points in the last two games. And that going into each of those games, you thought that they were gettable points. I mean, nobody was expecting, or maybe you were expecting St. Louis to just completely shit the bed last night. But they played a Utah team that's kind of they're on the same basic trajectory as the Blackhawks, and they'll have another good test tomorrow when they play Vancouver, because Vancouver is a playoff team. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that is going to keep the Blackhawks in games all year is they are fast.
Yeah,
they are so fast. And you could tell last night by maybe 5 minutes into the second period, it's like, oh God, the Blues aren't even in the same league as the Hawks. And I mean, over the course of a season, they might pile up more points. I don't know. Binnington would have been in net normally. I'm sure the next time they play, Binnington will be in net. And Binnington's a better goalie, but they just could not keep up with the Hawks. I think 13 out of 18 skaters had points last night. It was scoring all up and down the lineup. But it's one game. I mean, I think the Hawks are better than last year, but we're 5 games in.
Yeah, I mean, it's way too early to be making declarations that the Blackhawks are back, but that was a lot of fun last night. Two completely opposite wins. The game against Utah at home was the worst game they played all year, so of course they won it.
Yeah,
it was,
and that's one of the things that even that is encouraging. It's like, mm-hmm. You don't have a good game and somehow you still manage to get 2 points. You're not stinking out the joint and getting run out of your own building. I mean, let's face it too. The Mammoth weren't exactly shooting the lights out. I don't think either team had 20 shots on goal.
No, the Blackhawks finished with 14 that night. They almost had that many in the first period against St. Louis, which was good to see. The Mammoth had 22 shots on goal.
Okay.
2 to 14 was the shot totals. But, I mean, that was a slog of a game. It was just, being in the building that night was completely different. It was a much smaller crowd. It wasn't, opening night, a ton of empty seats. It's a Monday night. The Bears are playing at the same time. Utah Mammoth doesn't exactly get the angst up in the 300 level as a Montreal Canadian team does, or St. Louis Blues. And it was their first game of the season that wasn't somebody's big night. The Florida banner raising, Boston's home opener, your own home opener, and now it's a Monday night against Utah. You kind of expected the energy level was going to be low, and it was, but they found a way to win. And then last night against St. Louis, that was that's the most fun I've had watching a Blackhawks game in quite some time. That felt like the 2013 Hawks all over again. I mean, I saw our buddy Sam Fells busted out the David Lee Roth old school nod there. Just such a fun game, and to have it happen in St. Louis against the Blues just made it even better.
With Barrett Jackman in attendance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for at least one night, Lucas Reichel doesn't have to think about getting traded. Or maybe he does. Maybe now he's got some value.
Maybe. I mean, but we've seen Lucas Reichel do this before. Have a great game, and then the next 5-6 games, you don't even realize he's out there. So Friday night against Vancouver, it's a big game for him because he doesn't need to do 3 points every night. If he wants to, that'd be awesome. But just be noticeable, impact the game in a positive way. There's so many games where he doesn't impact the game at all, or if he does, it's in a negative way. So just the consistency has been his biggest enemy. So hopefully a game like that last night helped. And we can get into it. It's on our outline. I think he's benefited big time from Jeff Blashill's 7 defensemen, 11 forwards system playing.
Yeah, it's been working so far. I mean, he's got a lot of defensemen on the roster right now, and there are some forwards that just aren't really forcing the issue. I mean, Nick Foligno dealing with his personal issue with his daughter, and hopefully everything. The Blackhawks haven't announced anything else, but which is fine. You respect the man's privacy. I'm certain that he has gotten well wishes from at least 80% of the NHL.
Oh yeah.
But some of these other forwards have not. Sam Lafferty hasn't really been doing anything to force Blashill to go with 4 full lines, and Oliver Moore didn't make the team out of camp, and he had a big night in Rockford, but it was one big night. They want to see some consistent output out of Moore, and Frank Nazar still hasn't really found his footing yet. I mean, they've only had 2 games. We're talking about how early it is for the Hawks with 5. Rockford's only played 2. So, at some point, they'll be able to roll 4 lines. But for now, the 7-11 is working, and, it's also keeping the defenseman fresh, which is, helping out the goaltending.
Yeah, if Reichel continues to play well, that's going to make it more difficult to do this. And Landon Slaggert is coming back possibly as soon as tomorrow night, Friday night against Vancouver. We'll know a little more at morning skate. But so there's another forward, and that's a guy that I think Landon Slaggert fits Jeff Blashill's system perfectly.
Oh yeah,
and will be very effective. And another super fast guy to throw on the ice. Oh no.
And that's the thing. It's like it's one thing to look at all the first rounders that the Hawks have that are here or in Rockford or on their way, and but you've got to have your Landon Slaggerts out there too. You've got to have the guys who can hold it down on the 4th line. The 3rd line has been exceptional. Jason Dickinson has been centering that line, and they've been so good, and that takes a lot of the load off of the top 6. I mean, last night was also good to see Bedard get 3 points, and he was all over the ice. He was making an impact. And it was nice to see Ryan Green get a goal, because Green has been bringing his lunchbox too.
Yeah, for sure.
He's one of those guys. He'll fit in with Slaggert quite nicely. They're both those blue collar guys.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the 7 and 11 system, but when Blashill explained it the other day, it actually made all the sense in the world, because he says, you have with the 7 defensemen and all the young defensemen, he can put them in better matchups, play who's ever playing the best can get the more minutes. We saw that with Sam Renzel the first couple of games. Last couple of games has been Wyatt Kaiser, who has been really, really good. And then he said, well, I have 4 right-handed defensemen now. So Murphy and
Levchinov,
Crevier. Yeah. So he says Murphy and Crevier will be my 2 right-handed PK guys. And then you have Levjanov and Rizal to run the power play, so it splits that up a little evenly. And then, as we saw last night, it gets you chances to get Connor Bedard out there more and in more favorable matchups, because you can put him out there on the fourth line against the other team's fourth line and not the defensive specialist. He's going to get some shifts against bottom six forwards and bottom pairing defensemen, and he's going to, pad his stats that way. But it also helps a guy like Lucas Reichel and Ryan Green. They got to take shifts with Connor Bedard, and look, they both benefited greatly from that. That was much better for Lucas Reichel than playing with Pat Maroon and Craig Smith like he did all last year.
Yeah,
that's an upgrade for him, and it was good to see him be aggressive and play with some confidence, because there's no doubt he has the talent, he has the speed to be an effective NHL player. It's just his in between his own ears is his biggest enemy, and he can't string these types of games together outside of that last 10 or 12 games of the 21-22 season, or no, 22-23.
22-23.
Yeah. When him and Andreas Athanasiou, Blackhawks legend, and Philip Kurashev clicked. And he went crazy those last few games. But I think the most impressive part about the St. Louis game, as great as that second period was, where they took control, and Frank Nazar gave everybody another viral moment by scoring a goal, getting mugged, and then coming out of the bottom of the pile and celebrating while everybody's beating the crap out of each other. But I think the most impressive part of that game was the third period, because the Blackhawks had a 3-goal lead, and you were thinking, oh man, St. Louis is going to get one here in the first 4 minutes of this period, and we're going to have to sweat this one out. And the Blackhawks said, nope, we're just going to keep coming at you. And they scored 3 more goals and iced it. That was what impressed me the most about that game.
And, one of the things, Nazar talked about it after the game last night. This is a feisty team. It's clear that everybody's decided they're going to go out there and just try to physically push the Hawks around, try to intimidate the Hawks. Now, from what I've seen so far, teams have tried it, but the one thing the Hawks have not been is intimidated. They're not being discouraged from getting in front of the goalies. They're not being discouraged from getting into the corners, along the boards, anything like that. And this is when people talk about toughness, like people are saying, oh, the Hawks need to add toughness. Well, it depends on what you mean by toughness. A lot of people, when they say toughness, they immediately think it's 1990 and the Hawks are back in the Norris division. And that type of hockey doesn't get played anymore. If you play that game now, all you're going to wind up with is guys off the ice for 17 minutes at a pop. Toughness now, and this is what we saw when they were winning the Stanley Cups, it's not that they go out there and fight, it's that they take your best shot and keep coming. It's kind of like in every Rocky movie, when you get the swell of the music, that's when Rocky, he's getting killed. No, he's getting mad. And then beats up Mr. T.
No, it's the resiliency of this team early on has been impressive, and I think a lot of that has to do with buying into Jeff Blashill from day one. And that was that third period too. They were still in their system, still playing a structured game, where a lot of times it was so easy to just go out there and
young team.
Yeah, but they stayed on it. And I sat there and was like, I wanted to stand up and give them a round of applause. It's like, that is so impressive at this point of the season with all that youth on this team, that they still were like, hey, 5-2, so what? We want to score 10 goals tonight. We want to embarrass them. And the fact that Frank Nazar said that, what, this is kind of for the Winter Classic last year, that we didn't like the way that felt. And we're going to think about that every time we play these guys. And that to come from Frank Nazar, who was only on that team for about 6 days when the Winter Classic happened.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that came out of last night's game, being on TNT. all of a sudden, Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks have flipped the national narrative about them. It took them 4 games and 2 periods to all of a sudden, the same crew that loved to rip Connor Bedard last year and say he was playing pond hockey, and all of a sudden Paul Bissonnette's a body language expert and he wants to go play in Vancouver and all this other bullshit. All of a sudden, oh my God, this kid's really good at hockey. And all it took him was 4.5 games this year. That was awesome. Yeah. We heard all summer about the vibes of the San Jose Sharks, and they're so much fun. Yeah, they might be fun, but they're still a god-awful hockey team. They're terrible. They're going to be the worst team in hockey again. The Blackhawks are not the worst team in hockey anymore. They're a fun team that is going to be a pain in the ass to play every night.
And, it's funny, before the season started, you and I talked about it a little bit. And I kind of said, well, the Hawks are a bottom 5 team. And I'm starting to think that, the way that, we're 5 games in, we'll talk more about it when we're 20 games in. But at this point, I don't think they're a bottom 5 team. Something amazing would have to happen for them to make the playoffs. I do not expect that to happen. But I do think that, Blackhawks fans, don't start dreaming about Gavin McKenna. It ain't happening.
Well, why not? The Islanders were 10th to the bottom. That's the dream scenario. Miss the playoffs by like 5 points and still get the number one overall pick. The Islanders did it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not working out too well for them this year, but they
No.
might be getting Gavin McKenna the old-fashioned way this year by being the worst team in the league because they haven't been great. They're the only winless team left in hockey, and I believe the Oilers are next on their schedule.
Yeah, if I were still a betting man, I would have had my money on Buffalo being the last goose egg.
Well, only because they've played the awful Ottawa Senators, who somehow
we're now without Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, for probably 2 months.
Yeah.
Somehow Ottawa wore those uniforms the other night, and the uniforms weren't the ugliest thing on the ice. Congratulations. Because those jerseys are terrible, but they weren't as terrible as the guys wearing them in that Buffalo game. Way to just completely embarrass yourself against a laughing stock of a hockey team. Speaking of teams that could be in trouble, the Blues. Yes, 1 game, but they've played 2 games at home ice, both within a division against the Minnesota Wild and the Blackhawks, and they've been outscored 13-3.
Yeah. It has not been pretty.
And this is the division where if you have a bad 3 weeks, you can forget about making the playoffs. Yep. Because we all know what's at the top. The Dallas Stars are a machine. The Colorado Avalanche are a machine. The Winnipeg Jets are a great team. The Utah team is improved. You still have Minnesota, who will play hard to the end of the season. I don't know how talented they are, but they're not a fun team to play against. And even the Predators, as bad as they were last year, they look to be better. Everybody on that team last year had their worst year of their career at the same time. But they look to be better. So this is not a division you want to get off on a slow start. And right now, the Blackhawks should be feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah. And, again, it's a long way to go. And the Hawks have Vancouver. They have Vancouver tomorrow. And then they've got
Anaheim
Vancouver tomorrow and Anaheim. So Anaheim's 4 very gettable points, or 2 very gettable points, pardon me. And then next Thursday, I will be in attendance when they play Tampa, and that will be a tough one for the Hawks. Yeah. That's one where you just want the Hawks to give Tampa a tough night at the office.
Yeah, I think Vancouver is a winnable game too, because Vancouver's playing right now. I got them on the TV right now. They're in Dallas tonight, so they're going to come in tired. Hopefully, they're losing right now, so they're going to catch the team in the back-to-back. another backup goalie. The Blackhawks are going to have a ton of games against backup goalies. They have already had a handful already. They're going to get another one tomorrow night. That's a winnable game. In that Tampa game, I think it's early enough in the season where teams like that are still going to underestimate the Blackhawks and underestimate their speed and underestimate, their talent. And you can catch them. They're not going to be able to catch teams off guard much longer. But, and you don't tell me that Jeff Blashill is not going to want to walk in there with a chip on his shoulder and beat his old boss. Yeah. So, that should be a fun game.
Also, isn't Vasilevsky a little banged up?
He has been, yeah. I'm not sure if he's in or out of the lineup, but Vasilevsky's one of those guys that, October, November, December doesn't mean much to him. He gets rolling when the calendar flips over. He turns his switch over to beast mode. So, it's fun to even talk. Hey, are they better than we thought they were going to be? I still don't think this is a playoff team, but could they be, when the Olympic break comes, could they still be mathematically alive for a wild card spot to make you go, hey, they might play some meaningful games in March? Sure.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, again, I keep saying they're young. And when you got a young team like this, when everything is clicking, you get a night like last night. But, there's still going to be there's got to be some games where just it doesn't come together. I mean, Sam Rinzel, it's great to watch him out there, but, he's already got 10 giveaways this year. There's talent, and you could see with a lot of these guys. I mean, we've seen it with Kevin Korchinski. We've seen it with Oliver Moore. They're both in Rockford, but we've seen, there's been glimpses of the good player inside those guys.
Right.
And, Rinzel, if Korchinski was right-handed and Rinzel was left-handed, would Korchinski be in Chicago and Rinzel be in Rockford? Maybe. Sam is, he's got the talent. He's got the right-handed shot that, we always say that you can't have too much defense, and you especially can't have too much right-handed defense.
Oh yeah, I mean that's being a right-handed defenseman is like being a left-handed starting pitcher.
Yeah,
I mean they don't even care if you're good, just be right-handed and you can play.
Right, and the Hawks, like we've already said, there's 4 on the NHL roster. But yeah, there's got to be some nights where, we've seen it with Bedard. There's nights where we saw in Montreal, he lost his composure. He kind of fell apart a little bit. Shooting pucks into guys' nuts is not what you want Connor Bedard to be doing.
Yeah, you can do that every once in a while. That was fun.
Yeah. But you still, you want him on the ice, not in the box.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate the, his eagerness to stick up for himself and defend himself, but eventually let the guys who are there to protect you. Listen, I love that he's got a little bit of a red ass this year, and he's showing that he's not going to just be pushed around, and he's done with being the nice guy. That's awesome. That's only going to help his overall game, but you don't need to be getting face to face with Colton Parayko every night. Eventually one of these guys is going to haul off and whack you, and or you're going to. But one other thing about Bedard, we've seen at least twice, he's starting to get those star penalties called. Draw those penalties where he would never get that stuff the last couple of years. There was a play in the Montreal game. I forget who it was, but he was literally, did the old trick where he held the guy's stick with his armpit and he got the hooking call.
Got the hook.
Those are calls that he wouldn't get in his first 2 years. He's starting to get those. So that tells you what the refs are starting to think about him too. So love the competitiveness, love the feistiness. Don't need it every game.
Right. And one other thing I want to say about Bedard, this struck me. When Jonathan Toews was a rookie, I think the Hawks played a really bad game in Tampa. And Jonathan Toews said after the game something along the lines of, we don't hate losing. We don't hate losing. Something like that. I mean, obviously, anyone who listens to us, chances are pretty good you've watched Shoresy and you know about hating to lose. But I remember when he said that, I remember at the time saying, okay, just put the C on his chest right now. He's your leader. A guy who says something like that. Bedard, I think it might have been after last night's game where he said, we don't want to be good in 3 years. We want to be good now.
Yeah.
And again, that's captain speak. And I don't know, like, they made Nick Foligno the captain because he was the veteran and he had been a captain before and all that. But I never was a fan of the idea of having a placeholder captain. Like, before Taves got the C, Marty Lapointe had been captain, and then they took the C from him, and they had a year with he always wore the A, and the other 2 A's were given to different guys each month. And by the end of the season, Taves might have gotten it 2 months in a row because it was clear that he was going to be the new captain of the Hawks. But I kind of feel like, because we've talked about this. Bedard is the face of the team. He's the guy who, he's always got the big scrum around his locker. He's the one everyone wants to talk to, win or lose. He's going to be the captain of the Blackhawks. And it's good to see him to start to grow into that role before it becomes official. Just like I also think Frank Nazar will be wearing an A for the rest of his contract after this year.
Yeah.
His tenure with the Blackhawks.
I mean, this is the kids' team now.
Last
year at the start of the year, you still had Seth Jones and Foligno and Taylor Hall and all these guys. Alec Martinez and T.J. Brody. It was a veteran team. They were one of the oldest teams in the league. But by March, a lot of those guys were gone, and and this new crop of guys. But this year, from day one of training camp, it's the kids' teams. So it's only a matter of time. You look at the leadership core right now. I don't think any of them are here next year. Foligno won't be back. This is likely his last year. Connor Murphy likely won't be back. He probably doesn't even finish the year here.
He and Dickinson.
And Dickinson, maybe not. I would think probably not.
Probably not. Dickinson's a guy at the deadline. Playoff teams are going to want Dickinson to be their defensive zone draw guy.
Right.
So I don't.
And with Ilya Mikheyev, just re-sign Ilya Mikheyev. You don't need both Jason. I mean, having both of those guys is a luxury, but you don't need both of those guys. I think Mikheyev is playing himself into a nice 2-year extension by January, the way he's started this season. So all 3 of your letter wearers are more likely than not with the team next year. So there you go.
Yeah.
Bedard is your captain. You've got an A for Nazar, and you have a plethora of guys you could put the other A on. Vlasic is a candidate. The way Wyatt Kaiser's played and performed, he's a candidate. You got plenty of young leadership in that room, and future A's that aren't even here yet.
I was gonna say, and you've got guys. I think Van Acker's wearing an A in Brantford. Ryan Green was a captain.
Yep. So
he's another guy who I could see him wearing an A.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys like that. There's, talking about extensions. The one thing I did want to talk about a little bit was the Lane Hudson extension up in Montreal, because, everybody knows that McDavid gave the Oilers a discount on a short-term deal, but it seemed like Hudson signed for less than I thought he would have signed for in Montreal.
Well, it was kind of funny how that went down, where it was like for 2 days, all the reports from the big time insiders, your Friedmans and your Dragers and LeBruns, all those guys, was it's getting ugly in Montreal. The heat is on. This is not good. And then 2 days later, he signed.
He signs, and again for a much more reasonable amount than I thought he'd sign for.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal probably got off a little light, but I still don't know if he's going to be worth that, throughout the duration of his contract. He's a fantastic offensive-minded player, but unless you have that stalwart defensive defenseman to pair with him, I don't know if
which they don't have.
They don't. No, I mean, Reinbacher is nobody knows what he is. Noah Dobson's not that guy. So, guys like Lane Hudson can work if they have, all those years that Erik Karlsson was one of the best offensive defensemen in the league with San Jose. Who was his partner?
Yeah.
Marc-Edouard Vlasic, one of the best defensive defensemen of his generation. So that's why it worked. So if they don't get that guy to pair with him, yeah, he might get you 65, 70 points, but he'll still be a -10 at the end of the year.
And, like I already talked about Rinzel in his giveaways, and the one thing that's helping him so much is the fact that Alex Vlasic is his partner, and, Alex a puck eater.
Yeah.
And, that's what he needs. He needs to have that guy who's just he's going to be your defensive guy. But yeah, I don't know, because right now there's no defensemen that are on the Hawks that are lined up for an extension until next year. It's funny because like I said, I still think there's a good defenseman in Kevin Korchinski somewhere. It's got to come out, but it hasn't come out yet. So I think he'll probably wind up signing a 2-year deal. He'll sign something along the lines of what Wyatt Kaiser signed.
Yeah.
And maybe he turns it around like Kaiser did. I think he will. Like I said, I think he's got the, it's one of those things. I sound like a broken record. I feel like if I drank, I'd have a drinking game right now, which is every time I say turn talent into skill, take a shot. I feel like I said that in every single episode we recorded. And that's where you are with Korchinski. One thing I did want to talk about, though, is I want to talk a little bit about Marek Van Acker, because I loved him when the Hawks picked him. And he's off to a great start in Brantford. He'll be pro next year. And I watched he had a hat trick the other night, but one of them was an empty netter, so I'm not even counting that. But one of his goals was just a bullet one-timer from the right face-off circle. So all I could think about was, okay, he had that one-timer from the right face-off circle, and Bedard loves doing the one-timer from the left face-off circle. So there's your power play. But he had one goal. It wasn't in that game. It was the game before that, but it was very reminiscent of Taves's rookie year, the Colorado goal. People talk about the Colorado goal for years in Chicago, where he just took the puck, turned on the Jets, went around a couple of guys, got in on the goalie alone, and put it home. And this is a guy who the Hawks drafted him mid-late first round, largely because he had his shoulder blown out and he had to have it operated on. And he went to the combine and couldn't really work out. He's there with his arm in a sling. And the Hawks got him. If he had been healthy, Marek Van Acker, like he was for a good part of his draft year, he would have been a top 10 pick. And Kyle Davidson got him as an undervalued pick because of the injury. And that Davidson he's been so effective at finding guys who are like Van Acker, where you'd pick them and say, okay, he's really good. We don't need him for 2 years. can give him the time. The last couple of years, what they've done is the first pick in the first round. First it was Bedard, then it was Levshunov. This year was Frondell, and Frondell was a surprise that they said, "Okay, go to Sweden, play with the big boys," rather than have him cut his teeth in the NHL. Levshunov was the exact opposite, where I really thought they were going to tell him go back to Michigan State for a year. He went pro. But overall, they're really good at letting these guys develop, take their time, not rush guys. They were kind of painted themselves into a corner with Korchinski because he was so dominant in junior that the only option they had was either leave him in junior and let him be a man among boys for a year, which wouldn't have helped his development at all, or bring him to the NHL and baptism by fire.
Right.
And he wasn't actually, all things considered, he wasn't terrible. He wasn't that bad. He just hasn't been able to hit that next level. But, the fact that the Hawks have this long-term strategy with draft picks, they're loading up on first-round picks, so again, these high-end guys that they can wait on. They've got one guy playing high school football.
Yeah. Every time I see passes for 400 yards, I'm like, no, stop. I need him to be bad at high school football so he doesn't get wooed away to play college football.
Well, I think his football coach even said he hasn't, 400 yards in a high school football game isn't all that impressive, and because he's never been like in these big showcases or anything like that. He hasn't gotten any attention from any Division I schools.
No, Eden Prairie High School is a hockey factory. It's not a football powerhouse. Yeah,
exactly. Alma mater of Blackhawks legend Nick Leddy.
Yep, I have a picture at Eden Prairie High School I took back in 2013 or 14. It's a picture of me wearing my Nick Leddy Blackhawks jersey at Eden Prairie High School, holding up a sign that says, "Where's Cam Barker?"
Yeah, that was a trade I could never understand. It's like, why would the Wild trade away a local kid who was a first rounder, and he carved himself out a pretty decent NHL career, won a Stanley Cup. Yeah. A good defenseman.
Still playing.
Yeah. And it's funny because all those defensemen out of Minnesota, they'd go to hockey camps or whatever, and Phil Housley would always be around. So for a while there was just this parade of young defensemen out of Minnesota that all looked and played like Phil Housley. And Leddy kind of had that Phil Housley thing about him. I mean, he wasn't Phil Housley because only Phil Housley was Phil Housley.
Blackhawks legend Phil Housley.
Blackhawks legend Phil Housley. When he was coaching the Sabres, I remember one time I was talking to Joe, our good friend Joe Yurden, and Joe was saying during practice when they were out on the ice running drills, Phil Housley was the best defenseman on the Sabres.
It's not a good thing. But getting back to Vanacker real quick, he's off to a tremendous start. 8 goals, 11 points in 6 games. Back right before rookie camp started, there was talk that the 19-year-old rule for the CHL, AHL was going to go into effect this year. They're going to fast track it to where each team can now be loaned one 19-year-old CHL player to play in the AHL, one per team. Whereas previously, as we know with Korchinski, nobody under the age of 20 who's a CHL player could play in the AHL, which is to me always still one of the dumbest rules. I know why it's there. It's so the CHL can have their top stars play and make money. But now with the whole NCAA thing, they're in trouble. But time will tell. But when that was being discussed in early September that this could happen this year, I thought, well, maybe Vanacker is a candidate for that. Maybe they want to get him in Rockford. But now, obviously that couldn't happen. But I really like the fact that he gets to go to Brantford and be the big dog up there. No pun
Yeah.
intended. It's him and Jake O'Brien. Jake O'Brien.
I was going to say, Jake O'Brien's a center.
Yeah,
so.
And they're dominating. They're both. I mean, they both had hat tricks in the same game the other day. It's no longer Nick Lardis. It was all about Nick Lardis and his 70-plus goals last year. But now it's Vanacker and O'Brien's team, and he's gonna have a huge year, and he's gonna get. I would assume we're gonna see him at some point, depending on how far Brantford goes in their postseason. We could see Vanacker, maybe playing in a couple Calder Cup playoff games for the Ice Hogs at the end of the year.
Yeah, at the very least, he'll be a Black Ace.
Yeah.
But, he'll get a taste of a pro clubhouse and the playoffs and all that. And
he was there for a little bit last year. He went. I think he actually played in the game last year. I think they got him in one of those last regular season games. Or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. But
yeah, I think you're thinking of somebody else because Brantford, he never played for Rockford. Brantford was actually running deep until Lardis hurt his knee.
Yeah, right. Who the hell am I thinking of then? Oh, well, it's not important. I'll look it up. So he's off to a really good start. We talked about Nathan Bain is off to a great start.
I think Nathan Bain might be your 19-year-old next year.
Could happen.
I know he's committed to Arizona State, but those commitments go.
I mean, Tempe, Arizona, Rockford, Illinois, 19-year-old kid. Easy decision, right? You go to Rockford, get all that beefaroo.
I was going to say, but don't forget, Rockford has the good Olive Garden too.
Yes, and Taco Bell voted Rockford's #1 Mexican restaurant.
That's right. Yeah, they don't call it Screw City for nothing, buddy. But the other thing I wanted to talk about though with the organization is, all of a sudden they've just got a fuckload of goalies.
That's great. Can't have too many of them guys.
No, not at all. And
I mean, Kyle Davidson is when Kyle Davidson took over this team, they had no goalies.
No.
And now they got a lot.
And Brezhnev was a really nice pickup. Getting him, and he's been pretty solid down in Rockford. And what was it, 2 years ago they drafted Gajan? 3 years ago?
Gajan, yeah. Adam Gajan was that was the Bedard draft.
He was late.
Second rounder. He was a second round pick in the
he was second
Bedard draft.
I thought it was later than that.
No, it was second rounder, and
all of a sudden he's finding it at Minnesota Duluth right now.
Yeah. I mean, he struggled last year, but he was hurt. He was dealing with injuries, which is never great for a goalie. But he's bouncing back. So you have Gajan, you have Brezhnev. Obviously, Kamezzo is looking like an NHLer. They've got a plethora of goalies.
Yeah, either they have to do something with Drew Kamezzo. They can't just ask him to be a goalie in Rockford forever.
No.
So either Kamezzo is going to be part of a trade or Soderblom is going to be part of a trade. One of them is going to have to go somewhere to make room for the other. But Gajan, because I like him. He's a big, athletic goalie, moves from post to post really well. He's a good technical goalie. He doesn't just do it on size and movement. I feel like he's got really good technique. So, all of a sudden, it's like the Hawks. It's funny because you've got the three defensemen down in Rockford now. You've got Del Mastro, Allen, and Korchinski, but I think that might be something where maybe in this year's draft you might see Kyle start looking at some defensemen just to kind of backfill that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep the waves coming. You got to keep this going because you're not going to be able to A, all these guys aren't going to hit, and B, if they do, you can't pay them all. You got to bring in,
Right.
You got to bring, yeah, the salary cap's going up, but that just means that the salaries are going to go up. Like it's if salary cap goes up 11%, salaries are going to go up 11%. Like it's
Right.
not, it's not like they're going to have a ton of space. So, I mean, that's what the teams that have been able to win in the Stanley Cup era have been able to do is I mean, outside of the Panthers, they haven't really relied on a whole lot of drafting. But when you looked at Tampa all those years, they always had guys that they could bring up and fill in spots, and got to keep it in waves. Every 3 years, have
Florida's
another.
done something. Florida has their own approach, which is they find guys, and like I talk about how there's a good player in there somewhere. You can see him, and just the Panthers see these good players inside guys and bring it out. Gustav Forsling is the most perfect example of that.
Yeah, Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhard, Nikola.
Carter Verhaeghe.
Yeah, I mean,
Verhaeghe was on Tampa.
I mean, you can name pretty much everyone on their roster, and they were like, "Wow, man, there's a team out there that wish they still had that guy," but they didn't have that version of that guy. They had a different version of that guy, or else he'd still be in Calgary or Buffalo or Tampa, wherever they came from.
Yeah.
Florida does it that way. Vegas has a different outset. They just try and buy it every year. They don't care what their people think of them. Obviously, signing Carter Hart today. Hey, they look at it this way. We're already the most hated team in hockey. Who cares? What difference is it going to make?
Right.
So, sure, but you have to draft well, and I would totally see the Hawks getting another one or two defensemen and higher in the draft. They've got at least 2 first-round picks right now. Maybe they, that third round pick when they trade with Carolina again, they get the 28th pick is another Sam Rinzel type defenseman.
Yeah,
where they know we don't need you for 3 years, buddy. You go to college, you go wherever you're going to go, you're going to play. We'll see you in 2028 when we need you.
Yeah. And I mean, the way the Panthers just have guys dropping like flies this year.
Well, I mean, karma is a thing. and the injury bug eventually bites everybody, and they've been able to avoid it for the last 2 years, 3 years really, though, the Kachuk injury in that Cup final prevented them from 3 in a row. So, I mean, they're still a very good team, but the East is wide open this year.
Yeah, but I mean, more to the point is that the Hawks own the Panthers' first round pick thanks to Seth Jones. Yep. So they've got 2, and we've talked about it before that Kyle is a guy who's gonna, I'd love to know. I would love to know what their algorithm is, because they clearly have one where they look at each. They have a value assigned to each draft pick, and because of that, like coming up this year, they have 3 2s, and those 3 2s are going to turn into another one.
Most likely. I mean, that's been the MO so far.
Yeah.
I was talking with Jay Zawoski on one of the CHGO post-game shows. I think it was after the Utah game, and he was like, hey, do you see if this team starts putting together a few wins, do you think Kyle Davidson brings in some help for them this year? And I was like, no, because their help is going to be Anton Frundell and Roman Kinsirov in February or March, and then it's going to be Boisvert in March. Like those are that's your help. He's not going to trade anybody worthwhile to bring in a KG vet to get the 8th seed and get your dick knocked in by the Dallas Stars. That's not worth it.
Like I know if you go to Puckpedia and you look at draft picks, they actually do have a value for each pick. But the Hawks must have something that they probably have something a little bit more sophisticated than Puckpedia.
Yeah, they built that. They've got their Madhouse database.
Yeah.
Jeff Greenberg built when he was here before he left for the Tigers gig. Much like Theo Epstein had it with the Cubs. What was his called? Ivy. Yeah. So they kind of that. I mean, that was really the reason Greenberg,
as opposed to Jim Hendry's, which was a pen and paper.
Yeah.
I think that's what would print out Excel spreadsheets.
The old dot matrix style sheets with the holes on the side of them. But that's what Greenberg was brought in here before. He wasn't a hockey guy. He was brought in here to set up the analytics department and set up that Madhouse database. And it's hard to argue with the results so far. I know there's a large portion of the fan base. I don't know how large it is, but they're vocal. It's always, as in the case with everything, usually the loudest guy in the room has the least amount to actually say. I know there's a portion of the fan base that are sick and tired of this rebuilding and losing already, but that group is getting smaller and quieter by each passing day.
Well, it's sort of like being in the house at Thanksgiving where it's cooking and the kitchen smells good. You can use that in one of your articles. That's pretty good.
There you go. All right. Hold on. Let me write that down. It's cooking.
And the kitchen smells good.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming.
Put it on shirts.
There you go.
In the meantime, whoever's listening at 1901 West Madison, I could really use one of those cool strength shirts in a large. You could give it to Greg. He could send it to me.
Yeah. If you give me a large, I'm not stealing it. I haven't worn that size since the 4th grade.
Yeah, but gotta get the large for the gym so I look more swole.
All right. Yeah, exactly.
Rock the medium.
They don't sell those. Those are like team only ones. No, they don't have those anywhere. I've never seen those anywhere besides one of the Hawks.
At one point, Clark Street Sports sold. They had the Indian head, the full Indian head, and strength on it, not like the feathers. Like they had tradition with the feathers,
right?
But strength with the full sweater crest.
Well, that's a good segue with the tradition. We can talk briefly before we wrap up this second. Is if you haven't seen the first episode of the Always an Original docuseries the Blackhawks have put together, as soon as you're done enjoying this on YouTube and hit the subscribe button, the like button, the share button, all that stuff. After you've done all that, click over to the Chicago Blackhawks channel and check the first episode of Always an Original out. It is so well done. Now, no surprise. I mean, Blackhawk production always does well.
And having Sherman Dilla Thomas narrate, I've been a huge fan of his for years. This man is the 5th star on the Chicago flag. And he is just so good at the narration. And he brings a lot of the stuff that he's talking about, the first blood bank in Chicago. First blood bank was in Chicago, things like that. And, that's what he's bringing to the table. So he's tying it. It's not just you're hearing about the Blackhawks, but you're hearing about the Blackhawks as being part of the fabric of the city.
Right.
And I just think it's great. And it's so good that you actually aren't completely nauseated by the amount of Belushiness in it.
Yeah. You're right. And it's about 26 minutes long and it flies by. It's so well done. Any Blackhawk fan is going to love this, especially the younger fans that are either just getting into it the last couple of years, kind of from Connor Bedard, or if you're, in your late 20s now and you were a kid during the cup runs. There's a lot of good stuff in there that old heads like me and and some of the stuff I learned for the first time watching that. And I'm just such a big history guy, especially sports history. And I love that they're doing this. I love that they're going to have the Blackhawks Hall of Fame at the Fifth Third here when the expansion opens at the beginning of the year. So well done. It's kind of, the clips from Stan Mikita and Glenn Hall and, talking about Mikita's broken stick and figuring out the curve on the blade and Tony Esposito's helmet and all this stuff. So much. Like, I felt like that episode could have been 10 hours long and you still couldn't have gotten anywhere near as all the information you wanted.
Yeah, you didn't even get to the, Stan Mikita being really, he was really like the first tough guy star. Like early on, Eddie Shore wore a leather helmet, but like the plastic helmet, more of the modern style helmet. Stan Mikita was the first guy to really wear it and, be like that guy who, the star wearing the helmet. Like none of the other stars in the league did. Like the Hawks had Pitt Martin. Like when I was like 5 years old, just anytime I saw any hockey player wearing a helmet, I'd be like, Pitt Martin. Other than Stan Mikita. I knew who Stan Mikita was, but I could see a player on any other team and I'd be like, Pitt Martin. Back when they had NBC and Peter Buck and your Saturday afternoon game.
It's like when I was a kid and if I saw anybody not wearing a helmet, I thought it was Doug Wilson.
Well, he does have a glorious mane.
Still does, man. Hall of Fame hair.
Yeah, he and Craig McTavish.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why they never wore the helmet. Why hide all that lettuce?
Ron Duguay.
Pardon me?
Ron Duguay, every time he'd hit the ice at Madison Square Garden, you hear wolf whistles.
Good times. Good times for sure.
Google Ron Duguay poster if you want a thrill. There's a poster of Doogie there, shirtless, his sweater's over his shoulder, arm on the crossbar, just being sexy as hell. You want to know what the Studio 54 Rangers were? That is the Studio 54 Rangers in one photo.
Don't look it up at work, though, just in case.
No, it is safe for work. Just check with your cardiologist.
Alrighty, that I think is all we wanted to cover. Yeah, not too shabby. Cover
and uncover Ron Duguay.
Well, you did, not me. He's not my type. Shout out to the guy in the first episode of Always an Original for giving the Second Balcony a free plug too. We appreciate that.
Oh yeah. I mean, he doesn't know who we are, but we'll take it.
T-shirts in the mail, my friend. We're gonna get you that
T-shirt
free watch.
Coffee mug.
We're gonna get you that free watch that you used to get when you used to be on the leadoff man back in the day.
Oh yeah, from Danley's Garage World.
All right, before we get even more silly, let's cut it off here and save some for our next episode. Once again, if you're listening on YouTube, please hit subscribe, like the episode, tell all your friends. Frank is in charge of replying to the comments, so don't forget, if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, make sure you're following, giving those 5-star reviews. You don't have to say nice things about us. You can totally roast us in the 5-star reviews, just as long as you give us 5 stars.
And whoever it was that said he was missing like the last half hour of a couple of episodes, let me know what platform you were on so we can reach out to them and see what the problem is.
Yeah, I think there was one episode on Spotify that got cut to like 32 minutes, and I double checked it, and then when I went back the next day, the whole thing was there. So I don't know. It's being weird.
Okay.
But yeah,
so it was Spotify.
Could be. But yeah, we'll definitely look into that. If there's any technical issues, we'll clean them up. Be sure you're checking out everything going on at Blackhawk Up as well. I will have game day previews and post-game musings for the big games this weekend. And then we'll probably get back here probably this time next week, because I don't think there's much going on in between after Sunday. Or they play on Thursday, I believe.
They play on Thursday in Tampa, and I will be there.
Okay, so yeah, we'll figure out a day next week
figure out a day. Maybe we could do it Wednesday. I'm driving out there Thursday morning. So.
All right, we'll discuss that off the air, because that's boring as hell and nobody wants to listen to that. And if you're subscribed, you'll never miss an episode, because YouTube tells you, hey, you know that show you kind of sort of like? They got a new episode out. So that's how you solve that problem until we get on a normal schedule here. But thanks everybody for listening and hanging out with us in the second balcony, and we will talk to you soon.